I'm illegally parked, I know, part of my French and my Mercedes. But I have no excuse for this flea market shirt I'm wearing. My motley crew is beastie, and we enjoy the staring. I'm unemployed and daring. How dare I be so cool when it's so hot in Alabama? Sometimes we get snow too, and I'm as rare as a white Christmas in Miami. Really, the temperature's dropping on South Beach, the ocean's getting chilly. But I'm driving, my people, the party, yeah. Some drinking, get rowdy, party. And I went out with a buddy or two, and it was all on. And we got to the bar by the 1:45, and it was all on. And we got going, 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 Yes, I jumped off the boat, and I'm sinking in my chair, cause my beer bottle does not float. Help me now. Please enjoy the show. I done came up so fast that I'm afraid of heights. I gotta go, help me down. Or I'll just learn to balance somewhere between commercial dreams and music that is valid. My babies need to eat, so I create a simple sound. The fiasco threw me for a loop. Hey, I dumbed it down, slick. Wicked vibe and driving. I'm driving. My people, the party, yeah. Some drinking, get rowdy, party. And I went out with a buddy or two, and it was all on. And we got to the bar by the 1:45, and it was all on. And we got going, 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 and we got going. Yeah, my people are riding in trucks and wheels are resized in such a world I reside in. Your luck runs low with your pride, and enough to keep you up out of the club when trouble's around. I got them car keys in hand, I know what the fuck's going down. Some of these people come sick, some pop the trunk for AKs. They wanna do bodily harm, they wanna live for the day. We just came to get stupid, so give me that bottle of Crown. I take my girl to my Caprice and get the fuck out of town. Come on, girl. And I'm driving, my people, the party, yeah. Some drinking, get rowdy, party. And I went out with a buddy or two, and it was all on. And we got to the bar by the 1:45, and it was all on. And we got going, and we got going, and we got going. And we got going, and we got going, and we got going.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Pigskin Pete. Happy Monday to everybody. Man, I missed you guys. I was out of town for the weekend. Had a beautiful and amazing and fantastic weekend in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina. Anybody's ever been there? By the way, I want to give a shout out to some of the people that were on here for my last live stream last week who were telling me where to go. Obviously, I went to the Wicked Weed Brewery. That's where I got this hoodie. Also went to the Biltmore Estate, which was friggin' amazing. I mean, that place is unbelievable. Anybody who hasn't been to the Biltmore, you're missing out. I mean, that's really a cool place. Anyway, you can see from the title of this video. What is it? I forgot what the title of the video is. Clemson live college football playoff is a 7-team race. Why do I say that? Because it's a 7-team race. Here are the 7 teams, in my opinion. The obvious ones: Ohio State, LSU, and Clemson, right? The real 3 best teams in the country. And when you get to 4 through 7, it's debatable. And I know if you're a fan of one of these teams, you're going to come on here and debate me, which is fine. I get it. In no particular order, I want to go ahead and say that now. The only other teams, 4 teams that have a chance to make the playoffs, in my humble opinion, provided there's complete and total chaos, are Georgia, Alabama, Utah, and Oklahoma. All right, now, excuse me. Georgia is the fly in the ointment here. I don't know, I got something in my throat. Cheers. I'll go ahead and get rid of that. Georgia is the fly in the ointment here. Georgia holds all the cards. Georgia decides whether or not Alabama, Utah, or Oklahoma even get in the playoffs. Period. Why? If Georgia wins the SEC, there will be 2 SEC teams in the playoffs. If LSU loses to Georgia, LSU, unless they get completely blown off the field, which is, we all know that's not going to happen, right? We know Georgia's, listen, if Georgia wins by a touchdown, 3 points in Atlanta, Georgia's getting in the playoffs as a one-loss SEC champ, as they should. They've had a very tough schedule. If Georgia wins that game, unless it's by 30 points, which Georgia hasn't beat anybody with a pulse by 30 points, then LSU is probably still going to get in to the playoffs. So so that takes care of that. So if Georgia wins, forget it. It's going to be Clemson, Ohio State, LSU, and Georgia, provided that Clemson and Ohio State win out the rest of their games. Actually, I'll take that back. Ohio State could possibly still lose to Michigan and get in the playoffs. That's a whole other scenario. Because in one loss, Big Ten champs getting in. So if Ohio State loses to Michigan, but then wins the Big Ten, they'll get in the playoffs. I think that's probably less likely than Georgia winning the SEC, but that is a scenario that could happen. Now, Georgia loses the SEC championship. Then that opens the door to Alabama, Utah, or Oklahoma. Now Alabama has to win against Auburn, and probably has to win against Auburn in convincing fashion to even be considered at this point, right? Because they're not gonna have a chance to win the SEC. So I made a video earlier explaining about how I think that Utah still holds all the cards as far as controlling their own destiny, and there's a lot of people that are disagreeing with me. They're saying, well, they won't have a win over a top 10 team because Oregon most likely won't be in the top 10 at that point when they play them in the Pac-12 championship, which is completely true and honest. I still think, Georgia removed from the conversation. Let's say Georgia loses. I still think that Utah, if they win out, would get in ahead of both Oklahoma and Alabama. The reason they get in ahead of Alabama is obvious. The reason they get in ahead of Alabama is because Alabama will not have an SEC championship, and their best win will be against Auburn. The reason they would get ahead of Oklahoma is basically the same reason. I mean, I think that out of all these teams, Oklahoma needs Utah to lose to Oregon. Oklahoma needs Alabama to lose to Auburn, and Oklahoma needs Georgia to lose the SEC. I think that out of all these 7 teams, Oklahoma is sitting at 7, and they need a couple of losses ahead of them to even be considered. And that's not saying that Oklahoma is not worthy of being in there. It just is what it is. Oklahoma has not had that many wins over great teams. I mean, a while ago, Texas looked like a great win. They lost to Kansas State. They struggled with another team after that, and that's really all it comes down to is that they haven't. All these teams ahead of them, whether it's Utah, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, LSU, or Ohio State, have all been more dominant than Oklahoma has. Now you got to give credit to Oklahoma in those dominant. I mean, in those games where they weren't so dominant, they still won most of them outside of Kansas State. So, but I think in the minds of the playoff committee, Oklahoma needs some help. But in my mind, these are the only 7 teams that can still make the playoffs, provided provided Clemson doesn't lose, right? Or that's mainly the only one. Provided that Clemson doesn't lose and Utah doesn't lose. Johnny Red Dot coming through with a $5 super chat. Happy Thanksgiving to you and the family. Happy Thanksgiving to you, sir, and everybody else for that matter. Let me see who's in the chat here real quick. I thought about making this a call-in show, but I just don't have time for that. So I just want to just answer questions in the chat here. Q&A here. Little C7, Michael Lynch, Tiger Nation, G. White, Clemson at 98. Anthony Manzano, Megan Mullen, Hound Dogs in the house. Bowl game, baby, bowl game, go Vols. Yes. Yeah, that reminds me. I'll do my bet now videos tomorrow, but I think I bet on Tennessee, and I'm pretty sure I won that. SEC Dog, congrats, Hound Dog. No, I'm not trolling you. Alan V's in the house. Happy Monday to you too, sir. Shane 17, sink that boat. He must be a Wisconsin fan. Nola, I told you about LSU and Joe Burrow. Yes, you did. Good job, sir. And I told you, Nola, that if you meet Clemson in the playoffs, you're going to get smoked. And so we'll see who's right about that. Christian Ballard's in the house. We're the Storm. OSU loses and UGA wins out. Who's top 4? Well, Ohio State could still lose to Michigan as long as, like I said, as long as they don't get blown out. Ohio State could still. There's only 2 teams that can still afford to lose, possibly, and this is provided that everything goes the way that we think it's going to go, which we know in college football is not ever written in stone. But if Ohio State loses to Michigan but still wins the Big Ten, I still think Ohio State get in there, as long as they don't get blown out by Michigan. Which, does anybody think that Michigan's going to blow Ohio State out? No, it's not going to happen. LSU could possibly still lose the SEC championship and get in if they lost to Georgia. That would be the scenario where two SEC teams get in there. Outside of that, no. Anybody that loses is out. And this is another thing, by the way. For anybody out there who's vying for a expansion of the playoffs to 8 teams or 10 teams or 12 teams or 16 teams or whatever your little heart desires, the playoffs for almost every team outside of LSU and Ohio State have been going on for about 3 weeks now. They have. Oregon had a playoff game this weekend. Lost. They're gone. Oregon's not making the playoffs now. They could beat Utah in the Pac-12 championship 80-0. They're still not getting in the playoffs. So Oregon got eliminated. Penn State got eliminated. They had a playoff game this weekend. Every week for Clemson is a playoff game. It has been since week 1. Every week for Alabama is a playoff game, even though they might not get in. Still a playoff game for them. Every week for Georgia is a playoff game. It has been since they lost to South Carolina. So the playoffs have already begun. Just wake up. Stop looking at what the committee tells you the playoffs are during their rankings and say the playoffs have been happening since the first week of October. And we probably shouldn't even get into that. We can if you want. This is a Q&A, so I'll answer anything. But if you're new here, you might not know my position on this. If you've been here for a while, you know my position on this. I like the 4-team system. I like it better than the BCS 2-team system. Now, is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Would I cry into my Fruit Loops if there was a 6-team system where they, structured it to make a 6-team playoff? No, I wouldn't. Would I jump out of a window of the top story of my house if they made an 8-team system? No, I probably wouldn't do that, but I probably wouldn't be too happy about it, but I still wouldn't be devastated about it. Out of 8, anything outside of 8 teams, if you go to 10 teams, 12 teams, or 16 teams, I do have a problem with that. But I also think that, look, let's say we had an 8-team playoff right now, which is what the vast majority, it seems like from what I can tell, is the vast majority of people want 8 teams. That's the thing I read the most. We need 8 teams. We need 8 teams. We need 8 teams. We need 8 teams. You all see the same stuff I see on YouTube and everywhere else. 8 teams, 8 teams. Everyone wants 8 teams. Fine. If there was an 8-team playoff, Ohio State, LSU, and probably even Clemson could rest all their starters this week, or if not this week, they could rest all their starters in the conference championship games. Because if they lose, they're not getting in the playoffs, or they still will get in the playoffs. Even, Ohio or LSU's number one right now, okay? For instance, if LSU rested all their starters against Texas A&M, or let's say they didn't do it during the A&M game, but they waited till the SEC championship to rest all their starters, and they were still number one in the country. Do you think LSU, if they lose to Georgia, is going to drop from number one outside of the top 8? No, they wouldn't. So, in their mind, what's the advantage for LSU or Ohio State or Clemson to play their starters in their championship games? For all you people out there that want that don't like these teams resting their starters or starters sitting out for an entire game, look. Let me put it this way: if you're an Ohio State fan and there's an 8-team playoff right now, what do you have to gain by playing Chase Young against Michigan or against whoever you play in the Big Ten championship? What, he might go out there and break his leg or tear an ACL, God forbid. Nobody wants to see that, but it could happen. If Ohio State's going to get in the playoffs, whether they win that game or not, what the hell is the point in playing them? So this is the byproduct of the expanding the playoffs, is you're going to get people say, we already see it now. If you're not in the playoffs, these players sit out bowl games, right? It doesn't even matter if it's the Rose Bowl or the Sugar Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, one of the big bowls that used to be coveted in college football. Nowadays, if you don't make the playoffs, I'm sitting out and waiting for the draft. Well, if you expand the playoffs, they might sit out the championship games. They might sit out the rivalry games because they're still going to get in the playoff. Now, you can incentivize that by saying, well, the top, 1 or 2 or 3 seeds or 4 seeds get a bye, or they get home field advantage. That might curb some of it. But at the end of the day, what's more important? Keeping your star players healthy for the actual playoffs, or beating Michigan by 4 points in Ann Arbor? I don't think there's really that much of a debate about it. So this is the main reason why I'm not a huge fan of the expansion, because it does diminish not only the regular season, but in some cases, like we will see this year, it could diminish the championship games or even rivalry week. And I don't, as a purist, which is what I consider myself to be, a college football purist, I mean, as much as you can be, I'm not a big fan of it. Do I think it would ruin the sport? It wouldn't ruin it. Still the best. It's still the best regular season. It's still the best playoff that there is in sports. And people want to tell me, NFL fans will say, well, half of the NFL teams make the playoffs. And is it really fun watching an 8-8 team win the Super Bowl? No, I'm sorry, it's not. I mean, yeah, it's a great story. But if you lose half your games in your regular season, you should not be playing for championships. I'm sorry. There's something wrong with that system. Everyone says we need to move to the NFL system. I disagree. I think the NFL system needs to move to the college system and make less teams. If the NFL only had 8 playoff spots instead of 16, it would be way more compelling. Imagine the regular season games, how much more they would mean in the NFL if you couldn't lose 7 games out of your 16 and still make it into the playoffs. What's up, G White? P Digits. Who smoked the blunts? The bigger playoffs benefit more from basketball, baseball style. The way college football has been the whole season is more important. Yeah, exactly. And you can always tell the people that have no clue. The people that just started watching college football maybe a year or 2 ago, they stand out like a sore thumb in a crowd. These are people saying there needs to be 64. Half of the teams, these people, 60, I've heard people actually make case for this. 64 playoff teams in football. What do they want to take this shit to March? It's ridiculous. First of all, in basketball and baseball, you can play a game 2 days apart, right? You can have a game on Monday and a game on Wednesday and a game on Saturday. You can have 3 games a week in baseball or basketball, and they do that. You can't have 3 games a week in football. These guys be out there on crutches. These people are out of their mind. They said, well, you can do it in this sport. Why can't you do it in that sport? Because it's not the same sport. I mean, listen, you can play 4 straight rounds of golf in a golf tournament every weekend. 4 in a row. 4 days in a row. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Could you play 4? Could Alabama play 4 football games in a row? No. Kill these kids. Johnny asks, I'm new to football. Does Clemson and Alabama play football? No, they don't play football. Apparently what they do is they run around and hand each other cupcakes all day. That's what I've been hearing. Many thanks to Oregon for that loss last week. Alabama couldn't thank y'all enough. So now Christian Ballard and the rest of Alabama America, the rest of the Roll Tiders, are rooting for LSU. Because if Georgia wins, the Alabama's done. They're also rooting for both Oklahoma and Utah to lose. Kind of a weird situation when you get stuck in this situation as a fan where you start rooting for other teams, isn't it? Yeah. That's a good point. Michelangelo Leon. He's asking why I'm not including Baylor in this 7-team playoff scenario as one of the. So he's basically saying that there should be 8. I should be adding 8 team. I'm going to go ahead and add that right now, and then I'm going to scratch it out in a minute after I tell you why. So I'm adding 8 right now. So the first 7 are Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Utah, and Oklahoma. That's the 7 I had that have a chance to make the playoffs. Michelangelo here wants to know why I'm not including Baylor in there as a 12-1 Big 12 team. Well, I'll tell you why. This is why scheduling non-conference teams that have a pulse matters. And I'm not saying Baylor isn't better than Oklahoma. Hell, they proved they were for at least 3 quarters and 14 minutes during that game, but they still lost it. But look at Baylor's out-of-conference schedule. You know, everyone likes to talk shit about how Alabama and Clemson don't play anybody. Look at Baylor's out-of-conference schedule. It's terrible. I don't even know if half those teams are in the top 60 in the country, the teams that they beat. The other problem with Baylor is that they had 28-3 lead on Oklahoma at home in the biggest game of the week and blew it. So while that looks good for Oklahoma for coming back from that deficit, it also makes Baylor look like they're not worthy of competing with any of these top 7 teams that I mentioned before them. So look, Baylor's season ended when they lost that game. I don't make the rules. I wish I did, but I don't make the rules. And the rules are if you blow a 28-3 lead and you schedule 0 people out of conference, then you have no shot at making the playoffs. Take it up with somebody else other than me. I don't make the rules. What's up, affectionate troll? Does this guy have glaucoma? What's with the sunglasses? I don't have glaucoma. I'm completely and totally blind. I mean, I can't even see my hand in front of my face right now. Can't see any of it. You see that? Can you see my hand in front of my face? I can't see it. What's up, Cody Latchney? My Carolina Panther brethren. Go check him out. Everyone go check out Cody on the CP3 Panthers podcast. He does a great job over there of covering the Carolina Panthers. I'm really excited to see these college football playoffs start. Me too. Robert LeBron wants to know how good is Virginia Tech's defense. They had back-to-back. First of all, let me tell you, I was talking to my father-in-law earlier today. Virginia Tech has won 6 out of their last 7 games. Virginia Tech is probably, right along with Utah, the 2 hottest teams in the country as far as wins. I know it's fun. I know everyone wants to say the ACC is terrible. I know everyone wants to just remember Virginia Tech from last year or for what they did the first 3 games of this year, but they've won 6 out of their last 7 games, and they have been dominant in the past 3 or 4 of them. Completely dominant. So if Virginia Tech beats Virginia this weekend, and especially if they beat them convincingly, if first of all, I think Virginia is a decent team too, but let's say Virginia Tech beats Virginia by 2 or 3 touchdowns or more. They're not a pushover, in the ACC championship. Now, are they on Clemson's level? No. But are they better than North Carolina that Clemson almost lost to earlier in the year? Yeah. Would I be looking past Virginia Tech thinking that's an easy win the same way that I did, with Pittsburgh last year in the ACC championship? No, I wouldn't. Virginia Tech's a good team. Ashley Snell coming through with a $5 super chat. Buy a chicken leg for Saturday. I will be live here on YouTube for the Clemson versus South Carolina game. I was a little bit annoyed when I found out that Ohio State and Michigan are playing at the exact same time as Clemson and South Carolina, because I won't be able to watch the Ohio State game, which I wanted to. But anyways, it is what it is. What's up, Border Bob? Aaron Short's in the house. Listen to this guy. Intimate troll. Great. Another middle-aged white guy wearing glasses in his mom's basement. This is coming from a guy who is literally watching a middle-aged white guy wearing glasses in his mom's basement. And he has the name Intimate Troll, which might be... No. It might be. It really is the gayest name on YouTube. Intimate Troll. Is that a Bud Light Foster? Oh, Bud Light. Good night. Good night, everybody. I'm done here. Is it true Bud Foster's retiring? Yes. I mean, how much of an alcoholic am I that I read Bud Foster and I say Bud Light? Yeah, Bud Foster's retiring after this year. That's right, sir. What's up? Uncle Lou's in the house. Another guy, middle-aged white guy who makes videos in his mom's basement. Yep. There's 2 of us now. He misspelled intimate tool. Oh, Jesus. Now I find myself pulling for Utah to squeak into the playoff. I still think that, I don't know. Does anybody disagree with me about that? I still think that Utah is well in control of their own destiny. I think if Utah wins, they're going to get in. Again, assuming that Georgia doesn't win the SEC. If Georgia wins the SEC, Utah's not getting in. Because Georgia and LSU will both get in that scenario. But outside of that, I still think they have a leg up over Oklahoma and Alabama. I don't care what happens with Auburn and Alabama. I mean, unless Alabama somehow beats Auburn by like 50 points, I just don't see a scenario. I still think a one-loss Pac-12 champ will get in ahead of Alabama at this point. Utah can overcome USC loss with third string. Well, what's up, the Morgan Thomas Show? I don't think the committee has Utah jump OU if OU beats Oklahoma State and Baylor again. Morgan Thomas, you're saying that Utah is going to jump somebody. First of all, I'm of the opinion that Utah is going to be ranked ahead of Oklahoma in this next ranking, and I think they'll stay ahead of Oklahoma for the rest of the year, maybe until the championship game. So what you're saying is, I'm assuming, is that if Utah wins out and Oklahoma wins out, that Oklahoma will jump Baylor, not the other way around, and I don't think so. I don't. And here's part of the reason is, and again, this is not Oklahoma's fault, but it is what it is, right? So who else? First of all, who has Oklahoma? In the words of the great Uncle Lou, if he's still in here, who has Oklahoma played? Right? So Oklahoma's out of conference schedule is not very good. Oklahoma has had a bunch of very, very close wins against marginal teams and got beat by one of them. And the main problem for Oklahoma, and this is not their fault, but it still is what it is that Texas has turned out to be not a good team at all. I mean, this is the same thing that LSU's still doing. is still claiming 4 top 10 wins in the season, and they're claiming Texas is one of those teams. Texas is not even ranked anymore. Texas is not a good team. You could say, well, Oregon's not a good team either. Well, Oregon is better than Texas. Oregon will still be a top 15 win in the Pac-12 championship. Baylor, again, Baylor is a team that while they're top 15 caliber, I don't think that'll be considered as good a win as against Oregon. Look, we'll find out. It's just my opinion. I think that here's the order I have them in. I have Ohio State 1. I have LSU 2, and they're splitting hairs there because as far as resume and all that. But Ohio State's more complete. Okay, and first of all, I think Clemson should be number 2, and Ohio State should be LSU should be 3. But that's neither here nor there. Ohio State 1, LSU 2, Clemson 3, Georgia 4, Alabama 5. Actually, I put Utah 5, Alabama 6, as far as probability to make it in the playoffs, because I think Utah has a better chance to make it than Alabama does. Alabama 6, then Oklahoma. That's my order of probability to get into the playoffs. JT Thompson says, YouTube recommended a jackpot video firing back at Uncle Lou from 2 years ago. Well, YouTube does all kinds of crazy shit, and with some of the new rules and stuff that's coming out, you're going to see a lot more crazy shit coming out from them in the near future. I can promise you that. Cody Latchney says, Clemson and Ohio State so far away, the 2 best teams in the country. I think that one of those 2 teams is going to win the national championship. I'm going to stick by that. If they end up playing each other in the first round of the playoffs, then the winner of that game, in my opinion, will be the national championship when it's all said and done. But this is college football, and anything can happen. We've seen it on a weekly basis. So I'm not willing to bet everything I own or anything like that that's going to happen. But that would be my best guess. Who Smokes the Blunt says is what I'm hoping for. What's up, Donnie Shepard? Number 1, LSU plays whoever. Number 4, I'm going for Utah. Well, that's if it stays the way it is now. There's a chance that Ohio State could jump LSU, and of course, if LSU loses to Georgia, then LSU would drop to 4. There's still a lot that could happen. I see what you're saying though. Number 2, Ohio State. Hold on, let me go back up. Number 2, Ohio State play 3, Clemson, and as a pseudo championship, Clemson comes out on top, and a close one blows out LSU. I think I agree with that scenario if it plays out that way. SEC Dog says, I bet the homers on here don't know Georgia has given up the 3rd fewest amount of points in the SEC. I did know that since 1992. Our punter paper 2 weeks in a row. Yeah, look, SEC Dog, I'm a homer, but I still know that. Here's one thing I do know about Georgia. I know that Georgia is not a team that anybody wants to play. Now, if you're going to tell me would I rather play Georgia or Ohio State, I'd rather play Georgia as a Clemson fan because Georgia's somewhat one-dimensional. On the other hand, I mean, if you go back through, well, hell, you could probably go back through the entire history of football. Exclude the last maybe 3 or 4 years. But if you go back through the entire history of football, the style of football that Georgia plays, suffocating defense, running the ball, controlling the clock, has been a winning recipe throughout history. The issue with that is, and I don't think you'll disagree with me, or maybe you will, that the formula for winning championships has somewhat changed. Now, you can't really be one-dimensional on either side of the ball. We've seen Oklahoma, and if you remember a few years ago, Washington got in the playoffs. They were sort of the same way. Even when Oregon got into the playoffs with Marcus Mariota, and they went to the national championship. These are all great offenses. Defenses were marginal. You see the same thing with LSU now. That's my biggest criticism of LSU now. Oklahoma's done this multiple times. Georgia's sort of the opposite of that. And quite honestly, I'd rather probably be a more dominant defensive team than offensive team, even in today's football. I'd rather have Georgia's strategy, or I don't know if it's a strategy, but it is what it is, than have just a great offense and no defense. I'd rather have a great defense before anything. So let's get that out of the way. But there's been lots of teams, even in recent history, that have won championships just by playing great defense. So is it out of the question that Georgia can find a way into the playoffs or to win the SEC and possibly make a playoff run and beat some of these other elite offensive teams? It's not out of the question. It's just not very likely. Because the difference between Georgia and Clemson and Ohio State is that they have suffocating defenses and they have great offenses. So it's not out of the question, but highly unlikely. I'll be honest, Mac Jones does not look bad. Well, I wouldn't think that he would look bad. I mean, first of all, it's hard to judge what Mac Jones is based on playing Western Carolina. And that's the first thing. But the second part of that is, would anybody assume that any quarterback that starts for Alabama at this point is bad? I mean, no. I mean, if he's playing for Alabama and starting for him, he's probably pretty damn good. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there. Mighty Ducks action 2002 and 2003. What's good, Pete? Do you think Ohio State beats Michigan? Yeah, if you would have asked me about 4 weeks ago, I would have told you that it would have been a slaughter. I think it would be closer than Ohio State fans want it to be. But, yeah, I think Ohio State will beat them. Mac Jones is eating spinach every day, just like Popeye, I guess. Any chance you watched Ohio State, Penn State game? No, I didn't. I was out of town. I was up in the mountains, completely disconnected from football and reality. So I didn't see it. Actually, I take that back. I did go when we were at the Wicked Weed Brewery eating lunch on Saturday at right around noon. They did have a TV across the restaurant or across the brewery or whatever from where we were sitting. That had the game on. But other than glancing at the score every few minutes, I didn't see it. I did go back and look at the highlights and read all about it, but I didn't watch the game. Kind of hoping Clemson and LSU play in the semifinal so Clemson and Ohio State can compete for a national championship. I really feel like it's the best. Yeah, well, I think that most of the country outside of Clemson and Ohio State agree with you. I've had plenty of Ohio State fans come on and tell me that they agree with me that Clemson and Ohio State are the two best teams in the country. And I don't really think that's a hot take. I mean, I think you could probably turn on pretty much any mainstream media outlet and people are going to agree with that if they're not a fan of another team. But I agree. I think they're the two best teams, and I think it would be the most exciting game for the national championship. It would probably get the highest ratings, but I think no matter who's there, they'll get a higher ratings. And let's never forget that ratings don't. This is the one thing that people vastly overlook. The vast majority of people overlook the fact, because you all heard this. They want this team and that team in to get ratings. They want that team and that team in because they're blue bloods and they'll get the TV ratings. No. Listen, I know this from being on YouTube, and I'm not even, we were talking about national championship game. You're talking about tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of viewers watching that game. I'm on YouTube. I got a couple thousand people on here maybe watching me on a regular basis. I can tell you right now, just on YouTube, and I'm not even a big deal. The people that want to see you fail or lose are just as likely to watch you as the people that love you. So if Ohio State and Clemson were in the national championship, you'd get Ohio State fans, you get Clemson fans, you get just regular college football fans who don't care who wins. That's the main three. And then the rest of them, which is probably the majority of them, would be teams that hate both of these schools and we just can't wait to laugh at one of them losing. I promise you that. That's the way it goes. You're almost better off being hated as far as viewership goes. Haters come out and for what's up, Slim Shady Canes? Good evening, ladies and sirs. Good evening to you, fine sir. You're amazing and fantastic. Thomas Lee, how you doing, sir? Yes, P Digits says better than could say it myself. America loves the underdogs. Anyone see the most recent SEC shorts? No, I didn't see that, but Americans do love underdogs. This is the reason I've been saying, people say, well, they don't want Oregon or Utah in there because it won't draw a crowd. Well, I disagree. It'll draw the entire West Coast, who's probably been tuned out of the playoffs for the past 4 years, 3 years because there's been no Pac-12 teams in it. Also, you guys remember? Let's go back to like 2015 when Clemson was first coming on, not coming on for in national standards because 2 or 3 years before that they were a perennial top 10 team. But yeah, you guys all know this whole thing. Clemson's only been good for 4 years. No. Clemson's only been in the playoffs for 4 years. They've been good for a lot longer than that. But when Clemson first came in the first playoffs that they got into in 2015, everyone wanted Clemson to beat Alabama because Alabama was the juggernaut. Alabama was the best team of this century. Alabama. Everyone, if you're not an Alabama fan, you hated Alabama. Everyone, even the SEC fans, right? LSU fans, Georgia fans, they all wanted to see Clemson beat Alabama. Because they're like, they hate Alabama and they want to see there's this new team on the horizon, the underdog team, Clemson, that nobody believes can win anything. Clemson now has been in the playoffs 4 years in a row, 2 national championships. Now Clemson is Alabama. Now nobody wants to see Clemson win anything. So, the underdog is definitely beloved until they keep winning, and then they're no longer beloved. What's up, Mario Thomas? Man, Slim Shady Canes, what happened to your Hurricanes, bro? I came back from out of town and heard they lost to something called FIU. Is there a total mutiny and a burning at the stake going on there in Coral Gables? I bet there is. I bet there's all kinds of people saying crazy shit about firing everybody and cutting every player. If you guys aren't careful, you'll end up being like Florida State. You don't want that. Believe me. Well, don't believe me. Just ask them. They'll tell you. Yeah, got caught with their pants down is right. All right, so for the last 5 or 10 minutes here, I'm going to do a rapid fire question and answer thing. So anything you can think of within reason. I mean, don't go too crazy. Anything within reason, type your question in the chat and I'll answer it. Ohio State versus Clemson, who wins? Well, this is where homerism comes in. I still think Clemson's the best team in the country until proven otherwise. So I'll pick Clemson. But I think it would be close, though. I'll give her, all these people, and I'm one of them, too. I like to troll Ohio State fans saying 31-0, 0-3 versus Clemson, all that, stuff, because why not? I mean, it's fun to do that, right? It's fun. By the way, Ohio State fans are pretty easily triggered when it comes to Clemson. So, it's like low-hanging fruit. Can't help myself. But if I'm speaking honestly and not trash talking, I think that Ohio State's elite. I mean, you're not going to see a 31-0 if they play this year. It's not going to happen. And they could win. They could beat Clemson possibly. Clemson versus South Carolina score. I think they're going to. I don't think it'll be close. I think Clemson to score 45, and the Gamecocks will be lucky to score 14. So 45-14. Paper or plastic? I usually get plastic. Well, there's 2 reasons. One is it's quicker to bag it. It seems like if you get paper, then you start getting people that you got people that don't even know how to use the paper bags or to open them correctly. You gotta do like that and open it with air. They don't even know how to do that because no one gets paper anymore because everyone's so environmentally conscious. Also, I like to use those plastic bags. Does anybody else do this? I'm sure you do. You save them all, right? And you use them to carry shit in, right? If you're going to go somewhere to a friend's house and he says, bring this and bring that, bring a beer or bring whatever, you just go into your cabinet and you get one of those plastic bags and you use it to carry shit in. So they're reusable. So I love the plastic. And apparently I don't care about the environment very much. I think Penn State exposed Ohio State with that running quarterback. I don't know. I mean, I don't know about exposed is the right word. I think Ohio State, they played their B or C game and still won by 2 scores. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that. I mean, they had 3 turnovers, which is not going to happen most times. So I don't know. Plastic bags are Auburn luggage. That's a good one, sir. Is Tua overrated? No, I don't think so. I mean, he's injury prone, but as far as when he's healthy, is he overrated? I don't think so. No, I don't think he's overrated at all. I think he's great. Mario Thomas thinks, and I read a lot of this, the committee is going to find a way to put Alabama in. I don't agree with that either, Mario. Here's, again, the only scenario I can see where Alabama gets in is if Georgia loses, Utah loses, and Oklahoma loses. I'm sorry, wait, I take that back. If Georgia loses and Utah loses, I still think Alabama would get in ahead of Oklahoma probably. Barely. But they need a lot to happen. This might be the best question of the night. Turkey or ham on Thanksgiving, Pete? The only bird or animal, for that matter, that should be consumed on Thanksgiving Day is turkey. Look, ham is a Christmas food. Look, now, if you just don't like turkey, and that's the reason you eat ham on Thanksgiving, fine. If you don't like turkey, you don't like turkey. But if you do like turkey and you still choose to cook ham on Turkey Day, then you're either one of two things. You're a complete and total moron, or you're a communist. I'd rather be a moron than a communist, by the way. But it's probably not related to this video, though. Ham is for Christmas. Of course, living down here in the South, a lot of people do deep fried turkeys on Thanksgiving, which I think is great, by the way. You could deep fry anything, it tastes good. Don't get me wrong. But even though I grew up in the South, both of my parents are from Pennsylvania. So I did not grow up eating, mass amounts of Southern food as a kid. I mean, other than going to my friend's house and, all that. But what my mom cooked was not Southern food. And so she didn't fry anything. Everything was baked or broiled. So I didn't grow up eating fried turkeys like a lot of people did in the South. But I have had it, and it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. But I'm a traditionalist. I prefer just a broiled turkey, with gravy and all the fixings. Very simple. What's up, Philip Bates? Pineapple casserole. That sounds amazing. I need to try that. Matter of fact, I'm going to write that down. Pineapple casserole. God damn, that sounds good. Never even heard of that before. But now that you said that, I'm going to have Mrs. Peete look that up. See if she can make that. I'll report back to you how it tasted. J-Dog is a communist. He says a ham over turkey. Well, we all knew that. You can cook a turkey under the hood of an 18-wheeler. I'm sure you probably could. I'm not going to doubt that. Now, I probably wouldn't want to eat that. I mean, I don't know if I'd like engine and brake dust and soot all over my turkey, but I'm sure you could. I mean, you could cook a fried egg on the sidewalk down here in the summer, but I still probably wouldn't eat it. Pete, do you agree that Clemson is a football college, not a basketball college? Of course. Clemson's always been a football school. I mean, that's not even up for debate. Smoked salmon and elk steak for me. Well, first of all, I got to tell you, I'm not a huge fan of salmon. It's not terrible, but I Out of all the fish, I love fish, but not salmon so much. But what was the other thing you said? Sounded great. Oh, yeah, the elk. Oh, yes. Yes, sir. Now, I don't know about Thanksgiving elk, but elk in general is great. If Georgia beats LSU, will Clemson go to number 4 and LSU number 3? Oh, yeah, that's a good question. No, I don't think so. I think that I think Clemson will stay at 3, and the loser of that, or if Georgia beat LSU, I think LSU would fall to 4. Which would be interesting too, because you'd probably have Ohio State move up to 1, and they'd play LSU in the first round of the playoffs, and then it would be Georgia versus Clemson in the first round, which a lot of people would love to see that, wouldn't they? Pineapple casserole will be available at Daytona 500. Yeah. Mighty Ducks action. That's a good question. Do I think that Texas A&M can upset LSU? It's funny you asked that. I was talking about that with somebody earlier today. I do think so. Now I don't think it's likely. I don't because A&M can't score. I do think that that A&M matches up well with LSU defensively though. So I don't know. Do I think it can happen? Yeah. I mean, I think anything can happen in college football within reason, and it's not like Texas A&M is Wofford or Western Carolina or something, Citadel. So yeah, it could happen. I still think LSU will win by a couple touchdowns. Plus, the game is in LSU, which helps. So, plus at this point, Texas A&M is kind of a defeated team, right? I mean, look, I realize that everyone's going to tell me they played a tough schedule, maybe the toughest in the entire country, and I think that's probably true. They played Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and Clemson all in 1 year. I mean, that's rough, but they also lost to all those teams. So I don't know. I think Texas A&M is a very good team that's a victim of their schedule, but they're not a great team, and LSU is a great team. Do I think Michigan can beat Ohio State? I think somebody asked me that earlier. I think they can, but they won't. So, I mean, what reason would anybody have that's a viable reason for me to believe that Jim Harbaugh is going to beat Ohio State, especially since he hasn't beat them when Ohio State wasn't as good as they are now? I guess somebody could make the argument, and I'm sure there will be somebody that makes the argument that Michigan's better this year than they have been in the years past. And maybe that's true. I don't think Michigan's defense is better than it was last year. I think last year was the best defense that Jim Harbaugh's had. I think their offense is much better than it was earlier in the year, but is it even close to Ohio State's offense? I don't think so. The game being in Ann Arbor and the fact that it's a rivalry game certainly gives Michigan a shot. So, but I don't think so. Especially with Ohio State's got the eye on the prize right now. I think that Ohio State wants to destroy Michigan. And there'll be some people that will tell you that maybe Ohio State was maybe looking past Penn State a little bit, looking ahead to Michigan, especially the coaching staff. And there's some validity to that as well. So maybe the Penn State thing was more of a fluke than we thought it was. They were looking ahead to Michigan. What's up to Goat Watson? Go khaki pants, says Slim Shady Canes. Yeah. You won't see a Michigan fan on here. Well, not on my channel, you won't. They all hate me. They think I hate them, which I don't. I honestly could care less if Michigan does beat Ohio State. I mean, what do I gain out of that? I could care less. But these Michigan fans are sensitive. I mean, you tell them that they haven't won a national championship since 1949 that's legitimate, and they get all pissed off at you when you speak facts. Yeah. All right, guys. I've been on for an hour now, and I got to go. I can smell the food. I'm hungry. For all the Clemson fans, first of all, thank all the super chatters. Let me go back and see who the super chatters were. I think I know who they were. Ashley Snell and Johnny Red Dot, both with donations. You guys are amazing and fantastic. All you Clemson fans, go check out the link in the description of the video. Click that link. I got hoodies up. I don't have my hoodie yet. It's in the mail now. I got the Cycling Out hoodies. I got T-shirts, the whole 9 yards. So go check those out if you're a Clemson fan. Also, betnow.eu if you want to wager on college football or NFL football, or maybe even want to wager on tennis if you're a South Carolina fan. I mean, that's probably the best sport you got. But you go check that out. Use the promo code Peete whenever you sign up, and they'll give you a 50% bonus on your deposit. You guys are all amazing and fantastic. I will see you guys tomorrow live here on YouTube for the College Football Playoff Ranking Show. Have a great day. Pigskin Pete. Check it out.